Why do you care?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Unmainstream. And in this video, we're talking about Neal Degrass Tyson and his descent into radical ideological thinking. And this is a guy that should have an appreciation for facts, logic, good logic, logical arguments. And instead, he's decided to essentially become a paid or unpaid lobbyist for the transgender community in the name of nothing more than holding on to his deranged ideological beliefs. And I'm sure you've wondered about this. I have. How was it that Germany was able to descend into a mass psychosis where they were willing to go on murderous rampages of hundreds of thousands of Jews and run them out of their country and everything else? This was supposed to be the civilized world at the time. This was supposed to be the developed world. There's still undeveloped world all over the place. We were supposed to be the developed world at the time, yet they descended into this. It's because ideology is so dangerous, man. Once you believe some things, it showed that people will kill for their beliefs, they will lie for their beliefs, they'll spread propaganda, they'll do whatever it takes to hold up their radical vision of how things are. And there's no better example of this in modern day than our scientists and elites, people that have massive educations, huge brains, yet they seem to have not retained all that education, or they're just willing to throw it away to prop up their ideology. So let's get into this Neal Degrass Tyson and his descent into madness, essentially.
Scientific American, the magazine. I remember when it was around when I was
grew up with it, yeah.
Grew up with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, their editor had to quit. You saw this?
Yeah, I heard about it because she expressed some opinions, right? Yeah.
Okay, right, sure, but it sure didn't sound scientific. It didn't sound like the person I would want to be running Scientific American.
Okay.
It was a rant on Twitter. Okay, I could read it to you. It's really ugly, I apologize to younger voters that my Gen X is so full of fucking fascists. Okay, I'm not.
Okay, I'm not a gasket right there.
I'm not for.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not for canceling anybody on either side.
Yeah.
So But here's what I think is the scandal.
What?
This is in Scientific American.
Yeah.
Less than a year ago. Inequity between male and female athletes is the result not of inherent biological differences between the sexes, but of biases in how they are treated in sports. That's nuts.
You see, Bill Maher's right here. It is nuts, but it's also standard leftist propaganda that they have been spewing into every aspect of our society for over 30 years now. Stuff like that. Every societal ill is based on, discrimination or sexism. Just nonstop nonsense. This is what the schools are teaching. This is what the majority of professors and psychologists and mental health workers, and this is what the majority of these people think. It just goes to show you how insane the modern left has become.
And it sure ain't scientific, and it's in Scientific American. And that's why the Democrats lost the election. It's true.
Bill, every 20 minutes on your platform, you come up with another reason why the Democrats lost. No. You already have the answer. They lost the election. So anything you say is why
true.
They did it.
First of all, you don't watch this show, so you don't know that. I know you don't, and it's okay. But you talk as if you do, and you fucking don't. And that's okay. Just don't bullshit me. That's the one thing people can't ever do on this show is bullshit me. And that's fine. But I don't say that. I have very good reasons. But engage with the idea here. What I'm asking is, Scientific American is saying, basically, that the reason why an WNBA team can't beat the Lakers is because of societal bias.
What you're saying is not Scientific American says that. An editor for Scientific American says that, who no longer has the job. So don't indict a 170-year-old magazine because somebody.
Okay, this is called Scientific American, and they're printing something
because someone enters the cesspool that is social media and then participates in that exchange.
You see how far they're willing to go? Don't indict a 170-year-old magazine because of blah, blah, blah. No, the 170-year-old magazine indicted itself by hiring this woman and allowing her to write stuff like Gen X are all fascist and blah, 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 and this ideological propaganda. But he's willing to go, there's no lengths this dude's not willing to go to try to defend his insane ideology.
So
why can't you
let's talk about science?
Why can't you just say this is not scientific and Scientific American should do better?
Well, does she still have her job?
No, not because of this. I said the scandal is not her tweet. The scandal,
because that was like a year ago, was it? Which one was a year ago?
I think a year ago, women still couldn't beat men in basketball or any other sport. And it wasn't because of society. You don't see a problem
By the way,
here?
long-distance swimming, women might actually have the advantage. You can look into that. Yeah.
Maybe long-distance swimming, yes. Okay.
Yeah, just, I've looked into it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to file you under part of the problem.
Part of the problem, indeed. Absolutely remarkable. The weirdest answer I think I have ever heard anyone say in my entire life, ever. Well, maybe long distance swimming. Like, what? Dude, are you, like, he's out of his mind. He is completely ideologically captured. His brain that used to be is no longer there. It's remarkable.
The XXXY chromosomes are insufficient. Because when we wake up in the morning, we exaggerate whatever feature we want to portray the gender of our choice. Suppose no matter my chromosomes, today I feel 80% female, 20% male. I'm gonna put on makeup. I'm gonna do that. Tomorrow I might feel 80% male. I'll remove the makeup and I'll wear a muscle shirt.
That clip there made me feel like he just left the room from like a bad little Barbie-looking transgender person who gave him like the coldest BJ ever, and now he's like a ride or die for the transgender cause. I just don't know what could make a scientist go this ideologically mad.
Protect women from unfair competition and from various risks for which female-only spaces already exist. That's why people are having this conversation. Okay. It's not out of bigotry.
Do you have more than those two examples? And I'll address each of those in turn. But do you have more than those two? Probably not. Okay. So you don't seem to have a third example. So, and even if you do, we presume that would be a very distant third compared to those two cases.
I couldn't even believe it when I heard him say that. Compared to those two cases, my dude, those two cases affect every single woman in the United States and in the Western world. Like, are you joking? The transgender community is 0.06% of the entire population. You want to change all the rules so that 0.06% can get their rights, but you want to infringe on 50% of the entire population's rights.
Deliberately designed to protect women's interests. That is the concern that people have. So
we have a school from the early 20th century in New York, and I just saw it the other day. There's an entrance here and an entrance there, and this entrance says girls, and this entrance says boys. It's like, what the fuck? What? You separate them just to enter the school? I can look back on that and say that was ridiculous. You guys, what were you thinking? But back then, I'm sure it made complete sense. You don't contest gender with gender. You contest hormone ratios.
Well, hold on a second.
What
But
do you think of
the differences physiologically between men and women are not just hormonal. Women have a different hip angle. They have different heart capacity. They have different lung capacity. I mean, there are profound physiological differences, different bone density. We've had professional athletes on the show to talk about it.
I don't have a problem with that. So then you find ways to slice the population so that whatever the event is interestingly contested. So, for example, I wrestled in my life. I was captain of my high school wrestling team. It would be unfair for me at 190 pounds, which is what I was back then, to wrestle someone 120 pounds.
Hold on. It would actually be unfair for you to wrestle someone who is also 190 pounds but female.
Let me work my way there. Let me just work my way there, because
fine.
You are. I respect how active your brain is, but I've thought about all this, and just allow me to speak it at the rate that I do.
And there it is, the major flaw of modern leftism. They think that, so I've thought about this, and I'm much smarter than you, so you should just shut up and listen to me and take my advice because I've got this all figured out. The modern left thinks that they can make better decisions for other people than the person can for themselves. And that's not the first time that you'll see him do this. That smug, I know everything prickness throughout this video.
Lists and other opportunities that women are afforded by virtue of being women, and them now being excluded from that because males are entering that competition.
Yeah. So a deeper problem. Thank you for bringing that up. A deeper problem there is why were women underrepresented to begin with? What kind of bias exists within Parliament or among the voters, maybe even the female voters, that prevented the representation from being there in the first place? It's the playing field, damn it. What? Don't say it's an unfair playing field, so all of a sudden the big issue is trans women taking the slot of a woman in an unfair playing field. Fix the playing field. And you know something? The day you fix that playing field, this conversation will look completely ridiculous. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's how I would address that question.
Hold on a second. That's not addressing the question at all. The question is, female shortlist exists. Should biological males be allowed to enter those female shortlists? That's as simple as the question is.
Yeah, I'm saying I would ask why you have the shortlist in the first place. It's because there's something deeper that's wrong with society, that women are underrepresented in governance.
Another piece of leftist propaganda that a scientist should know better. Every single disparity in our society is not caused by society. It couldn't be that women just maybe aren't inclined to go into politics as much. Maybe it just could be because, you know, leadership qualities are usually male in most cases. It's definitely the women with strong leadership qualities are definitely rare. There's so many more reasons why it could be, but the leftist mind always goes directly to sexism, racism, misogyny. There's something in society that must be causing this disparity, that women aren't represented equally. Yet all of human history, the disparity has existed. But it's not because women just choose different things in most cases. It's a societal ill.
Is it better thinking? Is it better thinking? I know you think that, like, you had a thing with Martina Navratilova.
What do you mean I have nothing? What do you mean?
A beef. Well, she has beef with you.
Why does she have a beef with me?
Because you think, like, guys with dicks should get in the women's swimming pool, basically.
Well, whatever got clipped and reposted, I don't know. But what I said was that in this emergent space where you have people expressing themselves on a gender spectrum, and you want to now compete in sports, that's still a frontier to be solved. And I don't have the answer, but I can suggest one, whether or not it'll work. Maybe we don't compete by gender anymore. We compete on hormone ratios, okay? There was a woman who had uncommonly high testosterone levels, and they wanted to disqualify her because of how manly she was when she was born a woman and competing as a woman. So if that's how we're going to do it.
You know, this again, this
is what you
just...
really want. Wait, Bill, no, I've thought this through more than you might think I have.
Oh.
So what you really want is an interesting contest between people who are similarly talented. The least interesting Super Bowl you could ever watch is a blowout by halftime.
See, what we agree on is that there are anomalies in human nature, whereas
yes.
You know, the vast majority of people, I'm sorry, are still male or female. And certainly every cell in our body is dictating one of those other sexes. I mean, obviously...
Well, the hormones are.
Yeah. Obviously that's... Well, also I make sperm and other people make eggs.
That's what hormones do. Yeah.
You can't deny that. Okay. So this... But as liberals, I think, agree that, you know, there are anomalies in nature and they should be respected and protected. But this attempt to reorganize all of society around what a very tiny percentage, who again, we can protect and respect without pretending that every baby is a jump ball like penis. What the fuck? I don't know. That doesn't mean anything. We have no idea what this child is. I mean, that seems to be where you want to go. I mean, like, how many people fit this description that we should reorganize sports around? Sports we have men's sports and women's sports. And if the best team in the WNBA played the worst team in the NBA, the score would be 1,000,000-0.
It's absolutely sad that Bill Maher, a rabid leftist himself, is actually the voice of reason in our society anymore. And did you catch it again? What I showed you earlier in the clips? Well, hold on, Bill. I've thought about this a lot, and you should shut the fuck up and listen to me because I'm way smarter than you, and I've put a lot of thinking into this. Like, you just use the argument of hormone categories again, ignoring the fact that once you go through puberty, it's over. There's no going backwards. Your bone density is stronger, you're wider, everything is already done. Hormone categories couldn't reverse that, you fool. And you're supposed to be a scientist?
Can we organize society around that basic point with this, of course, proviso that we protect and respect people who do not fit into it?
Let's segregate society between dark-skinned people and light-skinned people because that nature made it that way, and that's how it is. So,
well, nature did make it that way.
You are...
And it's not segregating.
Well, there was a time
segregating anything.
That attitude 150 years ago was
2 years ago. You act like this was yes, right. Lincoln. This was a big issue in the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Trans people. That's right.
No, I'm talking about black,
I remember
white.
that from 1861. Yes, I remember those debates.
It was 1860.
And Lincoln was all about getting trans. Oh, for fuck's sake! You're ridiculous.
No. So here it is. Just all I'm saying is that, how about this? I'm looking at schools in Manhattan, and there's a school there, and there's built in the 20s and 30s, and there's a doorway that says boys, and a separate doorway on the other side of the school that says girls. And I'm thinking,
God!
Why are we doing this?
Because people are mostly boys and girls?
But why split them entering a school building?
Because they pee differently? Jesus Christ, I have to explain this?
No, because you know what I thought when I saw that? It's colored fountain over here, white fountain over here. That's what I thought when I saw that.
Well, that's not the same thing.
Well, it's not exactly the same thing, but that's what I thought. It's not exactly, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
But this is what I always say about these kind of issues. Like, there's two ways that you can be benighted about something. One, you can be too far from it.
Yeah.
Like, I would be too far from certain issues, racial issues, of course. How could I ever know?
Right.
You can also be lost sort of thinking-wise, as I am, because I'm too far from it, if you're too close to it.
Yes.
You
miss the elephant.
Well, you miss the elephant. It's the fly on the Mona Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fly wants to be on the Mona Lisa, I don't know, and I can't even appreciate art, but okay, you get my point. And so, like, I think when you see that, I totally understand why a man of your age does, but I don't think it's accurate.
So I used to wrestle, high school and college, okay? It's relevant to this conversation, believe it or not. So I was captain of my high school team, undefeated. Although,
wow,
but it was in New York. The real wrestlers are in like Iowa, you know, and Oklahoma.
Oh, I'm sure there's some wrestlers.
There's some, but if you really balance
New
it out,
York
it's
has
not.
no tough guys.
We got tough guys, but they'll shoot you or punch you in the face. They're not wrestling with wrestling moves. But anyhow, what you want is a match that's interesting to observe, not where one person dominates the other. In wrestling, they know this. There are 10 weight categories. In high school, I was 190 pounds. That was 50 pounds ago or more. I was 190 pounds. Very good incentive to stay there because if I were 1 pound over it, the next category was unlimited. So I was there at 190 pounds. I'm not wrestling someone 127. No. They find somebody else at 127 and wrestle 127. That makes the match more interesting for the viewer. So if we can split wrestling into 10 categories, and that becomes the wrestling match.
But all men against each other.
Correct. So,
okay,
so now I get
sort
that.
Of key point.
Okay. Okay. So all I'm saying is, what is it that makes the man the man? Is it the hormones? Okay. Is it if it's the hormones and you decide to give yourself a different cocktail of hormones? I'm making this up, by the way. I'm not saying it should happen this way. It's a way to start thinking about it.
It would be
maybe the track meets have hormone categories.
And maybe giving yourself the wrong hormones is deleterious to your health. Would you not admit that? Do you think we can just safely do things like this?
So you feel this way because you're so deeply concerned about the health of the people who are trying to find their place on the gender spectrum? You care about their health so much that you don't want them to go through that?
Translation. Why do you care? The dumbest, most logically flawed leftist argument that there possibly is. Why do you care? Let's just ignore all the facts of this whole situation and why there's actually a logical debate about this. And let's just call you a bigot. Let's just say, why do you even care what goes on? Maybe it's because I care about the 50% of women who now have, maybe I care when I swipe on a dating app and I have to swipe through 5 dudes that are clearly dudes that have like wigs on and shit. Now, I can't imagine being these women having to turn around and one of these could be in their bathroom.
It's not something that keeps me up at night, but when the subject comes up, I care about them like I care about all people. So if there is something...
You do, by the way. You think about all people.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Oh, okay. You're being
think about all people. No, I'm being sincere.
Yeah, I do. Yes. Yeah. Old school liberal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want all people to have, make this very challenging world that we live in better. So that's why there's honest debate about this issue.
We all know growing up that in the classroom, every year, there were girls who were a little more tomboyish. In fact, tomboy, who came up with that word? They're really tom girls, right? A tomcat is a boy cat. A tom girl would be a sort of a boy girl, right? I don't know where tomboy came from, but there were tom girls. They didn't wear skirts. They wanted to play in the mud with the boys. We know they existed. There were boys that were slightly effeminate relative to the others. We know they existed. And so, but we had words for them. They were ridiculed, whatever. We live in a time now where people are emboldened to say, today I feel part female and part male. All right? So today, in fact, I will be neutral to you. I will be androgynous. But you know something? If you're trained in this, you got to be A or B, you got to be a boy, you got to be a girl, you know what you're doing? You're taking your inability of your human mind. By the way, this is true for all human minds. All right? It makes it easier to think about it, but in the end, it's just lazy. All right? So you say, boy or girl, are you a boy or a girl? And then someone is androgynous, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. But just because you feel uncomfortable, does that give you the right to come back to a person who's expressing their freedom of self?
It doesn't, but I think what I would say, right, but what I would say to this, here's where it gets more complicated. Take the issue of transgender athletes in women's sport, for example.
Okay, I got 2 more sentences and I'll jump right into that. Okay. I just want to set the table here. Yeah. I'm setting the table where, that if we allow gender to appear on a spectrum, gender expression to appear on a spectrum, as is apparently the case in the real world, where people have the freedom to do so, then for you to put your in a law that inhibits the freedom of others, that's not a free country. Okay, so now take it to the next step. Where do you want to take that?
Well, what I want to take it to is I don't disagree with that. I think in a free country, you should be allowed to identify whatever the hell you want to identify as. It's fine. I've got no problem with that.
Okay, so now where are you taking it?
So where I'm taking it specifically to say the issue of transgender athletes in women's sport, which I think has, in an attempt to provide fairness and equality for trans athletes, in women's sport, it doesn't apply the other way in men's sport. In women's sport, it's created a new inequality and unfairness where you have trans women born with superior, powerful male biological bodies who are beginning to beat women with comfortable ease in many sports, and yet they were very unsuccessful comparatively when they competed against other biological males as they were before they transitioned. So my question, I guess, there is, isn't that a clear case where science has to be the determining factor? Because if you remove that from this equation, then you end up with gender-neutral Olympics and women don't ever win an Olympic medal again.
Well, there are certain events that the men, like the uneven bars, you won't find men on the uneven bars. It doesn't work with male physiology.
They might win a few.
On that one. Okay.
But my point being, there are reasons why we divide the sexes in sport, is my point. And the moment you start allowing gender identity to overcome biology, I see there's a problem.
Okay. So all that means is we are on a frontier that has not been previously breached, which is, what do you do in a sport where now there's an inherent advantage or disadvantage based on the rules that existed for that sport, whereas previously those advantages or disadvantages didn't exist. So this is not complicated. In high school, in college, and a little bit of graduate school, I wrestled. Okay, I was captain of my high school wrestling team and undefeated. I weighed in high school 190 pounds. Do I wrestle the 125-pounder? No, that would be unfair because I'm 65 pounds heavier, twice as strong, and maybe even faster. So they set up a rule. I only wrestle people my weight. Wrestling has 10 weight categories to make it an interesting contest. Okay, so let me just make this up now, just as a starter point. Men against women. You're contesting people in certain brackets of hormone levels. And why not?
Because it doesn't work.
From separating wrestlers into 10?
I hesitate to lecture you about science, Professor Neal Degrass Tyson. I really do. But I'll tell you why not. Because what they've already tried to do this. They've already tried to reduce hormone levels. What it doesn't do, that process, is reduce body mass or strength, which comes from the male biology.
Right. If you went through puberty as a male, and then transitioned afterwards, right, then you'll have a bigger, typically bigger, stronger body.
And that's where I just think it's unfair. Look, I don't have a transphobic bone in my body.
Let's get there. I'm getting there.
I want fairness and equality for trans athletes, but there's a big but here, I think.
I'm working my way up to that. So one possibility is you have hormone categories. If that does not solve the problem, or to the extent that it doesn't, then you put in other rules that separate who's competing with whom. Like I said, we do this all the time.
Right.
All right? And by the way, are you going to go to Michael Phelps and say, you're genetically taller, and we have a floppier, I don't know if all of this is true, but some of it is true, you have floppier ankles and webbed fingers, and so we're not going to compete you in this race because you'll have an advantage that other people don't. No, we don't do that, do we? In fact, when you really analyze it, practically every gold medal, record-setting Olympic athlete has some genetic thing going on in them that other people don't have.
They do, but my response...
Speed and reflexes, it's about 10% faster. So if you wanted to find out where the top women's athlete would land among men, you look at serving speeds, for example, because that's how fast you can bring the racket to the ball, and find the point where the women's serving speeds match up with the men's serving speeds, okay? And then that's where you would land in the world rankings.
I would say I get that completely, but the most important thing as a sports fan is you want to get a sense it's a fair playing field. That, I think, is really the crux of
So what you do is, in the future, what you would do is, so if the hormone levels categories don't work, then there are other categories, reflex categories, okay? Have people compete in reflex categories. I would love that, okay? Then there are people with pretty slow reflexes. They'll have different strategies and how they would win, and group them together. By the way, in chess tournaments, your chess rating puts you in a category where you only compete with other people in that rating.
That's
you
true.
don't compete against people where you beat them in 10 moves.
That is true.
So we are still at the dawn of how we will or should organize the future of sports in recognition of the gender spectrum. And we just have to put some creativity behind it.
Yep.
I don't see any problem with it. That's why I never wrestled a 120-pound person.
See how mindless this dude is? He equates the transgender bathroom situation to slavery and segregation. Like, that's how far he's willing to go to try to prop up this terrible argument. It's mind-boggling. And for the final clip of this video, I would just like to show Mr. Neal deGrasse Tyson that it's not that we're not, our inability to think on a spectrum. I want him to know that we can think on a spectrum, so here it goes. So do you see this spectrum here that I'm showing you? Well, you see the dark red all the way to the right? Well, that's the delusion spectrum. And Neal deGrasse Tyson is at a full hard red. Thank you guys so much. Please subscribe.